One of the best wines that I've made so far, in my opinion, on this winemaking channel, has been this dark cherry wine made with sugar. Today I'm going to make 1 gallon of dark cherry mead, or a dark cherry melomel, using honey. Hi, I'm Charles, and welcome to DIY Fermentation, your site for doing fermentation on a shoestring budget. Now then, before we begin, a couple of things. If you haven't already clicked the subscribe button, please click on that now. Also click on the notify button so you'll be notified when I do these on a more regular basis. Also, I am an Amazon affiliate, so if there's anything you see that you might want to get, like wine, yeast, or hydrometers, or anything else, please click on any of the affiliate links below. Also, you might want to consider supporting this channel by becoming a member. That would really be nice. Beyond all of that, let's get right into the making of this wine. All right, to make our wine, we need the following ingredients. We need 3 pounds of dark cherries. These are frozen. You can use fresh if you got them, if they're in season. We're going to be using 3 pounds of raw Clover honey. We're going to be using 1/4 teaspoon of Premier Classic Red Star wine yeast because it's good for red wines. We're going to be using straining bags. We're going to be using a gallon of water, something to do primary fermentation in, preferably something with a wide mouth opening so you can get your straining bags in there, and also big enough you can get your hand in there to pull your straining bags out. After a week of fermentation in the primary fermenter, we need something to do secondary fermentation in, airlock with stopper, hydrometer, so that we can get an initial reading of our potential alcohol level. And before we do anything, everything, including any utensils we'll be using, will be sanitized using Star Sans. All right, now the first thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and give these berries a quick rinse. Whether you're using fresh or frozen berries, I don't know, sometimes it's just giving them a quick rinse so you can give them one good look at to see if there's any berries that are past their prime, that need to be dealt with one way or another. That's all you really want to do there. Following that, out of the way, we want to go ahead and put these berries in straining bags. And I've got a freshly sanitized spoon for that. Move these out of the way for the moment. Whether you're using 1 gallon or 5 gallon straining bags or whatever you got. I mean, the straining bags are purely optional. They just kind of help out with the cleanup at the end of primary fermentation. All right, let me finish this up and I'll be right back. Now, the reason I've got the strainer sitting over a bowl is because these berries are relatively juicy and they are going to continue to seep out juice even as you put them in a straining bag. I mean, that's potential wine to be. So we're going to go ahead and put that in the pot when we swing this around. And now here we are at my favorite part of the videos, slaving over what's soon to be a hot kitchen stove. All right, I've got our honey sitting in some hot water because I want to make that flow as easily as possible when we pour that into our pot. Now, since we have 5 cups of honey and we're only making a 1 gallon batch of wine, I want to pour off 5 cups of our water because we're not going to need it. Did I say 5 cups of water? No, make that 6 cups of water. And with our remaining water, since we are going to be using a tea bag as our tannin substitute, I'm going to go ahead and just pour in a little bit of water to make our tannin mixture. And the remaining water, we're just going to go ahead and pour that into our pot. And I want to bring that up to a boil. And I want to bring our tea up to a simmer. Go ahead and cover that up. Cover that up. And wait for things to happen. All right, now that everything's come up to a good rolling boil, and as our tea is also ready, we can turn off our tea, and we can go ahead and just add that to our big pot. And now we can go ahead and add our cherries. Including all that good looking cherry juice. Soon to be wine. Get that out the way. Move that. Let's move this out the way. And I want to bring this water back up to a boil for about a good 5 minutes. And then I'm going to let it come down a little bit in temperature so we can then add our honey. Now that our cherries have had 5 minutes to come up to a boil, we're going to go ahead and turn off the heat because we're trying to make cherry mead, not cherry jam or cherry syrup. And the purpose of doing the boil in the first place was just simply to kill off any wild yeast or remaining bacteria that might have been on the fruit. Since we're not using Camden tablets, this is a good way to sterilize the fruit. So we're going to go ahead and let that come down a fair amount in terms of temperature, and then we're going to go ahead and add our honey. Yeah, I could add it now, but I'm going to wait for the liquid to come down in temperature quite a bit. And while I'm waiting, I might as well just cover it up and wait for it to cool down. All right, I think that's enough time. It's still a little on the warm side, but temperature is not that important at this point. I mean, yeah, it's hot, but it's not like, it's not like that kind of hot. It's pretty dang warm. Let's go ahead and incorporate our raw honey. You think if they designed these things, you'd think they designed them to come off easily. There we go. I am going to rinse this out with some of this juice later so I can make sure I get all of the honey out of that jar. Okay, this is now starting to make me mad. All right, do it the old way then. Pry it up using the side little tabs. There we go. And I've sanitized this measuring cup, so I want to go ahead and start getting out every last little bit of this expensive honey. All right, let's go ahead and give that a good little stir. And it's okay to go ahead and mash down on some of these cherries to help extract a little bit more of the juice. And what we want to do now is just go ahead and let it come down to room temperature. I let our dark cherry, sweetened dark cherry juice sit overnight because it was late and I was tired. So it's been sitting overnight. So it's definitely down to room temperature. We want to transfer our juice from here into our primary fermenter. Now again, I'm using a wide mouth fermenter because it's easier to get these straining bags into a wide mouth opening than it is trying to cram down individual cherries into a small neck bottle. But let's get this process going. Let's get these straining bags in there. And the rest of our mead to be. Now we want to go ahead and add the juice of our half a lemon, which is acting as our acid blend substitute. Also to give the mead a little bit of extra brightness when all is said and done. Now all we have to do now is add, or as it's sometimes known, pitching our yeast. Now before I pitch my yeast, I did draw off enough of the liquid to take a hydrometer reading, and that reading came in pretty high at 1.124. So this might end up being sweet wine at the very end, which is good. So we'll just go ahead and start the process of pitching our yeast. Move this out of the way. And all we really need to do is kind of sprinkle it fairly evenly across the top. Now because I've got these straining bags in there, I'm going to go ahead and give that a stir. I mean, it doesn't have to be a vigorous stir. I just want to try and just get some of that yeast just to submerge. Now, you don't really have to hydrate your yeast. You can if you want, if that's how you prefer to make your wine. But I've had very good success with simply sprinkling the yeast across the top of the musk and calling it a day. I've not had any problems with fermentation starting. All right. Now for the next 3 to 5 days, you want to grab a sanitized spoon, take the cap off, and go ahead and give it a pretty decent little stir. And you're doing that for a couple of reasons. Primarily, you're trying to incorporate a little bit more oxygen for the yeast to do their work. And then you can go ahead and put your cap back on. And put it aside. Now, after about 5 to 7 days, you can then go ahead and remove your straining bags. you'll probably end up with what appears to be a pretty used up bunch of cherries, but basically you can pretty much either discard those or use those in a around the garden any way that you normally would handle used fruit. But we're going to let that sit again for the next 7 days, after which we'll transfer that into our secondary fermenter or a secondary jug or a secondary carboy or a secondary demijohn. And we'll let that set for another 6 to 8 weeks. We'll then rack it into another container and continue that process for the next 6 months to a year. The longer you wait, the better your dark cherry, mead, melomel, Viking's blood will be. Oh, one last thing before I forget. It's always a good idea to label your batches of wine so that you know what you're dealing with. In this case, black cherry mead started on this date with a starting gravity or original gravity of 1.124.